The reflection of this ring light in my glasses kind of makes it look like I'm communing with something, like I have a third eye. Like I see you over there. I can see you not reading. Maybe this communion with evil spirits will give me the ability to get through my TBR this month. I mean, I doubt it, but we can hope. And welcome back to another video. This video is my slightly delayed TBR. My TBR that should have been up a few days ago, except that I have spent those days wrestling with my brain because alas, I have to tell you, my brain is currently in mood read mode. Don't we all love it when that happens? My brain has spent the last couple of days convincing me that everything that I have written on this notebook in front of me should just be thrown out. That I make terrible plans and why should we listen to me? That in short, we would be better just shopping our library this month. Mood reading doesn't happen in my house. It's like the river starts all peacefully and then there's a dam halfway down. And those beavers are working real hard to make sure that I'm not going to be happy. This is where we're at, guys. I'm making beaver jokes. This let's just mood read thing is a phenomena that happens in my brain when I've been very busy. And I have been a very busy cookie recently. There was the week away to the cabin in nowhere. Then there was the plague. The plague which felled people one after another after another. And don't get me wrong, and amongst that there was also some fun stuff. There was a weekend C.L. Clark and Samantha Shannon event. Amy was here joining us in the plague and also nursing us through it. And at the end of this week there is a little cabin in a loch on the west coast of Scotland just waiting for me. Yes, that's right, I'm once again running off into the wilderness. I do sincerely hope that I will return, but you never know, because one of these days I am going to commit to being the forest-dwelling bog witch that I am. But yes, all of those things meant that it was really difficult to get through my TBR last month, and this month my brain is just like, nah, don't freaking wanna. And also there's a good chance that you can't make me. We have long established on this channel that genuine and sincere mood reading is not a thing that I can do. But inevitably what happens is I pick up one book and I slog my way through it for weeks and weeks and weeks, or I pick up multiple books. Potentially infinite books, books as far as the eye can see, and I never finish any of them. Well, I do eventually, but usually like weeks and weeks later, interspersed with all the other things that I actually have to read. Mood reading is just not a thing that works. It is not sustainable, and yet here we are. We find ourselves alone on mood reading rock. I don't know, at the beginning of this video I thought that the horrible metaphors would somehow talk my brain out of this, make it sound less appealing, but mood reading rock sounds like it's at the edge of a creek somewhere, isolated and lonely, like it smells like grass. That hasn't put me off at all. In fact, it makes me want to go put on a travelling cloak and find mood reading rock and never come back. What we're doing here this month is less a rigid TBR. I'm going to go over my progress numbers for last month, but I'm not necessarily going to focus too much on the numbers this month. I am instead going to present my brain with a list of books that it might want to pick up soon. Books that I would really ideally like it to finish. And then if it does that, as a reward, I'll let it scavenge through the massive pile of haul books behind me. No, seriously, here's a screenshot. It's a massive pile of books. And if it's very, very bad, I'm gonna be really annoyed because we're at the midway point of this year, guys. We're at the mid-year freak-out point of this year. Need to be making some progress on those goals. And I mean, we have. It's not exactly something to write home about, you know? So this time around, as this is a less rigid and therefore probably shorter TBR than we usually have, I'm gonna change up our format a little bit. I'm gonna tell you about my progress numbers from last month, and then I'm gonna immediately tell you about the books that are in that category that I would like my brain to choose from. And hope that it's not like the time that I made myself a mood reading pool and then instantly never wanted to pick up any of those books ever again. Because like that sounds funny, but it was actually mostly el tragique. So first up, let's just have a look at the bingo board as it currently stands. If you are new here and you haven't yet seen my bingo board, I will link you down below to the original video where I unveiled it and talked in some detail about all of the things on it, and you know the rules and how it works. But essentially this bingo board is a collection of goals that I decided for myself in 2023 and have been regretting ever since. The first of those goals, and the goal that you guys are the most invested in, is my read 80% of my new purchases for 2023. That means that every new book that comes into my house in 2023 goes on a spreadsheet, and at the end of the month I go through that spreadsheet and work out how many of those books I have read, or now how many of those books that I have tried, DNF'd and unhauled, because you guys have been very yelly at me about making sure that I count those amongst my numbers going forward. Can I just say, and we will talk about it more when we get to the mid-year freakout tag video, like coming to a screen near you with all of my regrets, I had no idea how ambitious 80% of the books that I had bought this year would already be. Part of the reason of creating this square on the bingo board was so that I could look at my book buying over this year and make decisions about my book buying going forward based on this data. And there have already been so many interesting conclusions that I have been able to draw from my spreadsheet. Like, for example, I have already bought more books this year than I typically read in a year. However, a very high percentage of those books that I have been motivated to start immediately have ended up being books that I have DNF'd or unhauled. Then there's the weird fact that the new books that I have bought that have sat on my TBR the longest in 2023 have ended up being the books that are 4 and 5 stars. So in contrast to the books that I bought this year and then have been so excited and have immediately started and have let me down, the books that I have bought and then I have let sit there on my shelf for a little while have turned out to be the books that I have really loved. And to me, that's a weird statistic. Like, is that a psychological phenomenon that the longer I've owned it, the more excited I am for it, the more I'm into it? Or is that I make more questionable decisions about books that I'm immediately excited about? I wish that I knew more about math and that the dreaded dyscalculia didn't stop me from doing more deep dives into these statistics, because I think there's really interesting information in here, but I don't know how much I'm going to be able to glean from it at the end of the year. Anyway, this is a long road to a shortcut to tell you that I did not realise that 80% was going to be as hard to achieve as it is. And so far in 2023, this square has possibly been the best and the worst thing to happen to me book-wise. As you can see, last month my percentage of read 2023 purchases was 27%. And after last month, which included a lot of doing and a lot of being ill and not a terrible amount of reading, we have jumped up to the lofty heights of 33%, which again just proves to me that it's actually quite easy to make progress on this number, but it's not easy to make quick progress on it. So that's the percentage for this square. Let's talk about the books that I would maybe like my brain to consider reading in the month of July. Now, the first book is actually a repeat of a book from last month that I did not get to, but I also did not mention it to you guys in my TBR. And that's because this book is actually set in one of the places that I was going on holiday. And it's not the same as telling you guys like, oh, on the 3rd of this month I'll be going to LA. LA is a fairly big city. I think it would be quite challenging to find me there. But Scotland is not a very big country, and I don't think it would be that difficult to find me here if you really put your mind to it. And I'm a sensible modern gal, and so I decided not to discuss this book as it was set directly in one of the places that I was going to be in, and that's why I wanted to read it. The book that I am talking about is Witchlight by Susan Fletcher. This is historical witchy fiction with Susan Fletcher's very sort of subtle overtones of not exactly magical realism, but there being something special about the nature of a place. So Witchlight, which is also called Corrig and also The Witch Trials, I think, and like multiple other titles, but it's all the same book, follows an English woman called Corrig who has moved to an area in Scotland called Glencoe. Glencoe is essentially a series of beautiful big valleys created by Munros, which are small mountains. And as you can see from these lovely holiday pictures, that was one of the places that I spent a lot of time when I went away last month. But unlike me in modern day Glencoe, with the lovely visitor centre that is there and a bunch of other beautiful walking trails which are nicely marked out for you, Corrig was there in 1692, which is the time of the Glencoe massacre, where English soldiers slaughtered so many men from Scottish clans, wiping out essentially half of a generation. And Corrig was very much in the wrong place at the wrong time, because although she lives in this beautiful valley, and although the natives there know her to be a witch, she is very respectful of them and they are very respectful of her skills. And it is not until after this massacre that Corrig is captured and thrown into a dank cell. But then a mysterious man comes to Corrig's cell and starts asking her questions about the massacre and about what she saw, and she soon discovers that the whole plot is so much more complicated than she could ever have guessed. Now, if you guys have been around my channel for a long time, you will remember that I have a past history with Susan Fletcher. One of my very favourite books in the entire world is a book called Eve Green. I read this for the first time so long ago, and I was so utterly transported by it, so completely in love with it, that to this day it is the one and only book that I do not want your opinion on. You guys know that I say opinions live here. I love hearing what you guys didn't like about the books that I love, but when it comes to Eve Green, I just don't want to hear it. It's the only book in my entire life that I've become this precious about, but it's also for that reason that I have never read another Susan Fletcher book in my life. So, as I will be once again for my holiday this week adventuring through Glencoe, although not spending that much time there, I have decided to take Witchlight with me again and to give it another crack. I took it with me last time around and it just sat on the top of the bag looking at me like, you're not gonna try me, are you? You are far too intimidated. And if it is as good as Eve Green, if it makes me feel things the way that Eve Green made me feel things, then be prepared to listen to me talk about this book for like a really long time. The next book that I would like my brain to consider in very sharp contrast to Witchlight is the book Board Gay Werewolf. Amy discovered this and picked this up in a bookshop while she was here pre-plague, and I had been thinking about it ever since. And so eventually, as is my wont, I went and picked it up because you know what I'm like as a person. So Board Gay Werewolf is about Brian. He's in his early 20s and he's really struggling to make any kind of move towards actually being an adult. I'm sorry to inform Brian, but that doesn't actually happen 10 years in the future either, friend. We're still just here trying to figure it out. But Brian doesn't only have to negotiate the fact that he's in his early 20s trying to make his way in the world, he also has to negotiate the fact that he is a werewolf. In fact, he's a fairly newly turned werewolf, and so his monthly changes to his slightly shaggier form aren't going so well, and he doesn't know how to not do this, particularly when his brain goes, well, I could eat the bad tippers and also the guys who have ghosted me on Grindr. And so into Brian's life enters Tyler. Tyler is a werewolf too, and he has his life pretty well together. In fact, he is an entrepreneur and he is trying to bring being a werewolf into the mainstream. And he thinks that if he can be Brian's mentor, then maybe Brian could get on board with his organisation and could help him with his dream of making everybody live peacefully side by side. Except Tyler is a fraud and Brian is in a lot of hotter water than he realises. This one just looks and sounds excellent, and I am so sad that I didn't get to pick it up last month because it would have been a perfect Pride Month book. But alas, neither my brain nor my body was up for that, so I'm going to try and persuade my brain to take this one with me on holiday also, as I think it's probably going to be a very quick read, and I may need it to emotionally regulate if I do read Witchlight. And then finally, a book that I have to put into this category because it is a new purchase for this year, but it is also one of my Patreon book club picks, is Just Like Home by Sarah Gailey. In case you guys didn't know, I run a book club on my Patreon called the Seance Society. We don't always read creepy books, but a lot of the time we do. And bi-monthly, we pick the top 2 most voted on books from our poll to be our book club books for those 2 months. And at the moment, as of me filming this video, this book is overwhelmingly winning in the poll. And that's probably because it's both horror, haunted house and kind of serial killer-y. A unique combination that follows me, kind of like a custom perfume, except far less appealing, you know? So Just Like Home is about Vera. She has had a phone call from her mother to say that she has to come home because her father is dying. This is a complicated proposition for Vera because her father isn't just dying, but he's also the person who completely tore her childhood apart because he is also a serial killer. And so the very last thing that Vera wants to do in her life is come and spend more time around her father. But she feels obliged to her mother to make the effort, and she makes the trip, only to discover that it's not just she and her mother in this house. It is also a weird artist, somebody that her mother has moved in for the money, but who is slowly going through Vera's childhood things and creating art out of them. The issue is, however, not just that she has to live with this guy and she doesn't really like him, but also that he seems to have taken up the habit of leaving weird notes about the place. Or has he? Because the more that Vera looks at these disturbing notes, the more that she thinks these are written in her father's handwriting, but they can't be, of course. And so then, as the frequency of the notes speed up, Vera is forced to admit that there may be more things rotten in her family house than she realised. Doesn't it sound perfect? Doesn't it sound exactly like something that I should take with me when I am locked in a little wooden box on the edge of an isolated loch with no streetlights and just the sound of wildlife outside to keep me company? Doesn't that sound like a great idea? I'll tell you what, there might not be lights outside, but there will sure as hell be lights inside. Now, next up, we have got my Read 12 Buddy Read Square. This is the square where myself and my lovely friend Amy try to read 12 books, ideally from our backlist, across 2023. Our discussion at the beginning of this was we don't have to do an actual monthly read, we could do 2 or 3 in a month if we really want to, and we have actually done an extra accidental buddy read in June, but somehow, somewhere along the way, this became a monthly challenge for us, which means that we are sitting on 5 of 12 buddy reads. We should be sitting on 6 of 12 buddy reads, which means that we did not get to the Witches of Vardo last month, which is a bit freaking annoying, honestly, because I don't like being behind on this total. This total somehow feels more glaring to me than the Read 80% total. Like the 2 times this year that we've been behind in our buddy reads, I've been actively anxious about it. So we still have Witches of Vardo to read, we will still be doing that. But we have a new buddy read for this month, which we will be taking when we go on holiday because Amy is coming along with us. And that book is Certain Dark Things by Silvia Moreno Garcia. You know that we are Silvia Moreno Garcia stans on this channel, and I am delighted to be buddy reading one of her books with Amy. So Certain Dark Things is kind of a Mexican noir, but with vampires. Because Silvia Moreno Garcia does like an actual straight up detective noir like in Velvet Was the Night, but this one is a very different vibe. So initially we are in Mexico City and we are following a young boy called Domingo. Domingo is homeless, he lives on the streets, and he is just really trying to get by in life when into his life comes Atel. Atel is a vampire, but in this world that means that she is descended from the Aztec blood drinkers. She is ancient, she is beautiful, and she is running for her life. Somehow Atel has got herself on the wrong side of a narco vampire clan, and she is trying to flee the city in one piece, but she needs help. Domingo is absolutely not something that she factored into this equation. She doesn't really want her help to come in the form of a small boy. But as time goes on and the capers get hairier and hairier, the two of them become closer and closer. And then the tagline on the end of the book says, "Vampires, humans, cops and criminals collide in the dark streets of Mexico City. Do Atel and Domingo even stand a chance of making it out alive, or will the city devour them all?" I am very much looking forward to finding out what the answer to that is, particularly because this book is hella short. I have a hardback of it, and so I didn't realise how short it was, but I saw it the other day in a bookshop and it's teeny weeny tiny. So hopefully reading that will also leave us plenty time to catch up on Witches of Vardo, and thus ease my anxiety once and for all. As for my Read 2 books allowed to lovely spouse Harry go, we are still reading A Curious Beginning because the plague stopped us from reading it at all. It's very difficult to read out loud when you can't breathe, and it's very difficult to listen to anything for concentrated periods of time when all you can hear is yourself hacking up your lungs. So we'll be carrying on with that one, but we will also probably be taking book 2 with us because we are absolutely obsessed. Now for Kindle books. Last month I was on 4 of 12 of the Kindle books that I want to read for the year because, as we all know, my Kindle is the place where books go to die. I'm pleased to let you know that the total for that jumped up to a lofty 5 of 12, but that was kind of it. So as always, I have popped 2 books on my I would like to read these Kindle list in the hopes that my brain will remember that they exist. The first of those books is A Light Among Shadows. This is an indie, queer, dark academia romance. That's the thing that I really love about indie books. You can list all of the genres that it might realistically fall into on the back. So A Light Among Shadows is about James. He comes to this private boys' school as somebody who is failing in life. But contrary to his image as a typical kind of troubled boy, he actually thrives in this new environment. James makes friends, and now that he's happy again, he goes back to his love of writing, and some of the things that he is writing are love poems. And those love poems he's sneaking into the bag consistently of a boy that he likes. William Escher is the complete antithesis of everything James has come from. William's hatred of the establishment and his love of opium are things that are accepted norms in his life. But one night, William comes running in from the rain, terrified and ranting about ghosts. And James is the only one who believes him. And this kicks off the rest of our mystery. So yeah, it's also paranormal and a mystery too. It's all the things, but it's also one of those indie queer romances that everybody tells me I need to pick up. Because it's on my Kindle, I just keep not doing that. So maybe we shall do that this month, brain. And then the other Kindle book that I would quite like to get to is Gather the Daughters by Jenny Melamed. Now, I absolutely hate it when I watch anybody's videos and they put a book on their TBR and they're like, oh,
I'm not going to give you a synopsis for this one because I want to be surprised by it too.
like, I kind of feel like it's part of my function here to give you the synopsis of a book. All that being said, I really have tried to remain completely ignorant about Gather the Daughters because I know that it contains 2 massive twists and that if you know either of them, it will ruin the book for you. And so instead, all I know is what friends have told me and what I can gather from the little blurbs that are scattered around the place, which are also purposefully vague, I think. So Gather the Daughters is essentially about a cult. This cult lives on an isolated island and they have their own kind of version of the Bible. And in this version of the Bible, men grow up to take charge and be leaders, and women grow up to do all of the other menial tasks and to bear daughters, etc. Throughout all of this, we are working sort of towards a summer ritual where some of the girls will be fully indoctrinated into this cult. They will finally be told their full purpose. But one of the girls sneaks out the night before and she sees something that she was not meant to see, which leaves her questioning everything about their life. Again, another book that lots of people I know have read and lots of people have been telling me for ages, you need to do this. It's creepy, it's dark, it's haunting, it's very something that I will like. And I have been like, yeah, okay, I have it somewhere. And that somewhere is on my Kindle, so I've never picked it up. Now, one of the goals that I am thrilled to say that I am barreling towards at the speed of light is now my Read 12 audiobooks goal. Last month we were at 4 of 12 and this month we are at 6 of 12 and I am still listening to a couple. Normally when I have my audiobook mojo, I like to listen to 2 audiobooks at a time that have completely different moods so I can switch between them. Usually one of those will be non-fiction and the other one will be a book in a series. And sure enough, I am re-listening to a series right now. Last month I listened to Moon Called, which is the first book in the Mercy Thompson series. Mercy is a coyote in a world of werewolves. She was raised by a werewolf clan, but she was very much taught that she was outside of that. In Mercy's world, the Fae and the werewolves have been outed for several years now, and they're trying to peacefully live alongside humans. But some horrible things in history have repeated themselves, and some of those Fae are living in essentially reservations. And so Mercy mostly keeps herself to herself. She runs her garage, does jobs for supernatural beings, and that's as much interest and involvement as she wants. And then one day a brand new turned werewolf turns up a teenage kid looking for a job and a place to stay, and suddenly Mercy finds herself in the middle of some serious pack nonsense. This is of course a paranormal romance series, although I would say that it's far less romance heavy than many of the paranormal series that I've picked up in my life. Like, the romance is definitely a solid plot in it, but there is a mystery in every book, and there's also a real sense of building and development on those characters from the first book all the way through this series. Patricia Briggs does such a good job of making consequences believable, of dealing with like the aftermath of traumatic physical events. She's just great and I love her, and I am delighted that I'm going to be rereading these books on audiobook. So this month I'm going to be moving on to the next two and just carrying on with my reread, and I'm also going to be picking up Red Rising. Red Rising was an audiobook that was on my TBR last month that I just did not get to. It's very annoying because I was very excited, and in fact I started physically reading the book and I just couldn't fit it in, so I'm going to be trying to do that this month. And now we're going to slightly diverge from my usual format of these videos. I'm not going to tell you about any more of the totals because every single one of them is involved somehow in a vlog that I'm currently filming, and so I don't actually know by the time that this video goes out where I will be with those vlogs. So trust me that I'm making progress on them, I'm just not maybe making progress out loud. And instead we're going to finish off with my other book club books. So from the poll at the moment, it looks like the second book that I am going to be reading for my bi-monthly book club is The Other Bennett Sister. This is a book which has legitimately been on my TBR for years now. Originally I had a huge, very ungainly proof, and then I think at the end of last year I picked up a finished signed copy from Toppings, and so it's that copy that I'm going to be reading from, although I hear that the audiobook for this one is also amazing, so I'm like... The Other Bennett Sister is, of course, about Mary Bennett. She is the boring, religious, piano-playing sister that everybody else rolls their eyes at. She's really the only one out of all of the sisters in Pride and Prejudice who doesn't really get her own plotline. Nothing interesting happens to Mary. In this book, Janice Hadlow takes Mary and she gives her the same journey as all of Jane Austen's other heroines. Instead of her kind of like knockoff background story that she had, she gets her own plot, and ultimately she gets the question at the end of that plot of her own man and what exactly her choices might mean for her life and her family, because as the back of the book says, Mary's destiny diverges from that of her sisters. It does not include broad acres or landed gentry. I don't know why this book landed so hard back on my radar, but as soon as I put it into my Patreon poll, so many people have messaged me like, oh my god, I've had this book for years and I have never read it either. So apparently we're all excited about it, but we're all intimidated by the size, because I think it is like 600 pages. But if that is 600 pages of Mary getting what she deserves, then I will read that. And maybe I will also re-listen to the audiobook of Pride and Prejudice, because that too is banging. And of course, in addition to my Patreon book club, we have Around the Disc in 800 Days, which is a complete Discworld read-along that I am running with my lovely friend Kirsty. You can find her here and down in the description below. And I think you can tell by the fact that I'm like meh and ha that I am very excited for one of these books and very not excited for this one. Small Gods is one of my least favourite Discworld books, I'm not gonna lie. I struggle to get through it every time I read the series. And in sharp contrast to that, Lords and Ladies is one of my very favourite Discworld books, like ever. So I guess that because I have to read Small Gods first, Lords and Ladies is like the apology for it, and I'm very grateful for it because I'm not that happy about doing the hard thing. So that's it guys, that is my tentative TBR for July. Could we all just lend some good vibes, send some crossed fingers, you know, anything, any little nugget of encouragement for my brain to do the thing that it most wants to do and actually read the things, but like specifically the things on the list. So if you have got all the way through this video guys, leave me the brain emoji down below, because my brain and I have been two separate characters for this entire video, and maybe if it sees people cheering it on, it will do what it's supposed to do. Before I go, I would like to thank my wonderful patrons on the Loch tier, Cinderella, Samantha D, Samantha H and Silky, for helping to make this video possible. If you too would like to join us in Loch Fern for some small town Scottish spook, then all of the links are down below. If you're new here and you enjoyed watching me wrestle with me for the most of this video, then please consider hitting that subscribe button. And if you enjoyed this video, then please hit that thumbs up because it really does help my channel. Take care and I'll see you guys soon. Bye!